From jails to hospitals to one of the most important buildings in the world, there are a lot of places that can be haunted. I'm Bob from World 5 List. Join me as I take you through 13 of the most haunted places in the world. Number 13, ALCATRAZ. Now I'll begin my list with one of the most infamous buildings ever made, ALCATRAZ, which rests on an island just off the coast of San Francisco. ALCATRAZ was built from the ground up to be one of the most sturdy prisons around, and one that was literally escape-proof. That claim would be tested over the years, but all attempts have failed, with the exception of one. However, the group was never proven to have made it to the shore. Either way, for nearly 30 years, ALCATRAZ held some of the worst before it got shut down. But apparently, that was too late, because it had already become haunted. Now, numerous reports from people in the prison even today and in the past have said that it's haunted. Some people seeing apparitions of people who clearly aren't there, with others having heard noises coming from cells, even though they're completely empty. The most ironic part of it all, though, is that it's all made ALCATRAZ even more of a tourist attraction and a lure for ghost hunters. Number 12, POVEGLIA, Italy. Now, it's a sad fact of life that humans often do the most irrational things to try and save themselves. So when the bubonic plague would arrive in Italy, people thought the best thing to do was to send all the infected people to an island for them to live out their lives together in misery. Basically, it was both an exile and a death sentence, and yet they did it in droves. But that's not where the haunting ends. Later on, long after the plague had been gone, the island was given a new purpose, as a mental ward. Yeah, I guess you could say that's how it went. Long story short, the patients in the quote-unquote mental hospital were actually used for experiments of an extremely dark nature. Between the two events, the place is apparently full of spirits with both the plague and the tortures, and if you believe the local stories, the soil of the ground that is on POVEGLIA is actually comprised of 50% human ash, because the bodies of plague victims would be burned in order to ensure they didn't spread the virus anymore. That's a lovely thought, right? Maybe roses will grow well there. Number 11, CHATEAU de BRISSAC. Now we head to France, where a green lady awaits us. A castle that was once built in France during the 11th century was then rebuilt in 1502 and dubbed the Château de Brissac, after the purpose of who ordered the rebuild. Now, sometime afterwards, a double murder would take place, and one of the victims was a woman named Dame Verte. Ever since that murder, Verte has apparently remained in the chateau. She's been there so long, in fact, that residents of the home are not only aware, but they've gotten used to her. That's sad on a whole lot of levels. You'll know when you see her because she's wearing a green dress, but then when you see her face, it's apparently one of a corpse. Many guests at the chateau have witnessed her, and she apparently is pretty scary, so the legend continues to go on. Number 10, BABENHAUSEN Barracks. But first, if you're new here, welcome! Be sure to subscribe before you leave and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest videos. Now next up, how about Germany and my terrible attempt at an accent? The BABENHAUSEN Barracks is known as a museum to the most of the world, but it's also a place with a whole lot of history of haunting. This is appropriate in a way because the barracks is a World War II museum, and as such, it has apparitions of soldiers that have been seen most in this place. There have also been reports of lights turning on and off mysteriously, commanders shouting out orders to troops who aren't even there, and even a person being heard on the telephone despite a call not being made. Oh, and there's also a witch that haunts the place as well, because, it obviously wasn't scary enough without a witch. Number 9, the old vicarage. On to Sweden we go, and here we have a place that was once a home that was turned into an inn of sorts, and also a cafe. It's been haunted from start to finish. This all began in 1927 when a chaplain, of all people, experienced a force taking his laundry down off the line that it was attached to. Then a priest in the 30s experienced a ghostly sighting of an old woman. He followed her for a little bit, but then she soon vanished afterwards. Fast forward to the 1940s, and numerous paranormal sightings were seen by residents who lived there, including a woman of the house seeing 3 old ladies looking at her from the edge of the bed. And finally, in 1945, another chaplain actually wrote a full journal which recorded all of the paranormal things that he encountered, of which were numerous. Someone really hated religious people in that house. Number 8. Lawang SEWU. Now we venture over to India, to Lawang SEWU, a place that resides in Indonesia and was once built by a railroad company. However, during World War II, the Japanese would take over, using it as a prison, among other things. There were even battles that took place there, which likely added to its hauntings. Now the place is a tourist attraction, and people come from all over the world just to try to have a paranormal experience. And to their credit, some do actually get it. Former employees, soldiers, and more have all been recorded as ghosts in the area. It's amazing what people won't do for an attraction. Number 7. AKERSHUS Fortress. Welcome to Norway, and a fortress with quite a big history. The place was built to be a stronghold to protect the city of Oslo, and it did for a long time, but it also had a prison with many people who died in their cells. As if that wasn't enough, Nazis would soon take over, using the stronghold to carry out various executions. Now, as for the ghosts, it's actually rather unique because it's not just people who haunt the stronghold. There's also apparently a dog that guards the gate. Oh, but don't pet the dog because if it comes up to you, you're going to die in 3 months in a very, very horrible way. At least that's how the legend goes. Number 6. Edinburgh Castle. Now, what's better than a haunted town or a city or an island? A haunted castle overlooking a haunted town or a city or an island. And that's exactly what many people consider Edinburgh Castle in Scotland to be. The castle is very, very old, and a lot of bad things have taken place there, like torture, numerous battles, and a whole lot more that all adds up in the end. Much like other places on my list, Edinburgh Castle is now a tourist attraction, and many people come from all over the world, having reported strange things within the castle, including being touched and pulled and pushed, seeing a headless drummer boy, dark shadows of people who aren't there, sudden drops in temperature, and more. Number 5. Fort George, also known as the Citadel in Nova Scotia. Now, let's just be blunt here. The Citadel has received hundreds of reports of ghosts being in the building in one form or another, which includes one account of a uniformed ghost walking into a room and then simply vanishing. But that, however, is just the beginning. There are reports of both male and female ghosts, a little girl accompanying people on tours, spirits appearing in mirrors, loud noises, and even people getting shoved when no one's around. Now, it's unclear why the place is haunted, but something must have drawn everything there. Number 4. Ghost Hill. Now, sometimes a haunted area comes from a great number of misdeeds and injustices, and that might be why the Ghost Hill is labeled as one of Asia's most haunted spots. Ironically, it is technically a museum, but before that, it was a defense outpost that was made by the British in the 1930s in Malaysia. So, what exactly happened? Well, in World War II, the Japanese would invade and overtake the outpost. And that's when they decided to transform it into a prison. Now, while technically it isn't the most haunted turn of events, it soon became that way. Because, as a lot of killings and torture would take place while the Japanese were there, the spirits of those who died are said to still roam the area. But in a cruel twist of fate, another spirit that walks the Ghost Hill is of one of the guards who actually helped to administer the torture. Number 3. The Monte Cristo Homestead. This homestead, well, it's had a series of tragic events take place that makes it seem like something's really wrong with the house. Between 1885 and 1948, the place would be owned by a family named Crowley, and during that time span, the following things happened. 1. A child was dropped down the steps of the house and perished. 2. A maid fell off the balcony to her death. 3. A stable boy somehow burned right nearby. And after all of the events, the family then left the house in 1948, which leads us to number 4. After the house was given to caretakers, one of them was murdered in his own room. Now, while accidents do happen in the household, this many, really, that rings as something much more than natural. Number 2, the Ancient Ram Inn. The Ancient Ram Inn is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the world today, and for good reason. Because basically, the moment that it was built in 1145, there have been odd occurrences there, and some are downright terrifying. Now, many think that the inn was built on a pagan burial ground where sacrifices had occurred, while others think that the inn was built on 2 ley lines that have invoked some kind of deity spirit. Now, regardless, there are plenty of people who will attest to being attacked by spirits or ghosts in their rooms, with many having even reported to flee the bed and breakfast screaming at the top of their lungs because they saw something, and those reports continue even to this day. Number 1, the White House. Now, are you surprised? Well, so was I when I first researched this. But apparently, not only is the White House one of, if not the most haunted place in America, if not the world, there are many, many reports of exactly how haunted it is. Now, if you think logically as I do, as ironic as it sounds given the topic, given that the White House has been around since the 1800s, it's had a whole lot of people pass through its doors over the centuries, and that makes sense that it could be possible for it to be haunted. People have died in the White House, and even those who didn't may have had a connection to the place that would pull them there after they died. In fact, there are numerous ghosts and specters that are rumored to roam the halls of the White House, from former presidents like Lincoln to first ladies like Abigail Adams to former staff and more. Now, don't get me wrong, even if the place is haunted, it's clearly an event that isn't harmful, else the building would have been taken down years ago. Still, the fact remains, of all the possible places that could be, or really should be haunted, it's ironic that one of the most important places in the world is apparently infested with ghosts. Thanks for watching. What did you think of the haunted places, and have you ever been to any of them? Do you have an urge to see if they are truly haunted? Let me know all about it in the comments below, along with your own ghost stories. Subscribe after you do, and I'll see you next time.